Action.
Hi, everyone. I'm Beth Johnson, and with me, as always, is scientist Frank Marchese, and this is the Grudge Report, SETI Institute's science show following Star Trek Discovery's latest episodes. Spoilers abound, so if you haven't watched the most recent episode, turn back while you still can. All right, this week, we're not going to talk a lot about science and tech because there wasn't a ton of science and tech on this show. It was definitely everybody needs to take a breather. It's a mental health episode. So I really liked that because I'd had my concerns about Detmer over the past few weeks. So I'm really glad that we kind of we dealt with it finally. And
So
the whole thing.
The show is basically about how the crew got lost and feel lost and disconnected. That we mentioned that last week too.
Mm-hmm.
How they realize that as a team of overachievers, in fact, they don't have really a meaning anymore because they're living in the future.
They're living in a future with no federation, no orders, no real purpose. You know, there's nobody telling them where to go and what to do. They're having to kind of figure all of this out on their own. And everybody they've ever known or ever loved is gone. So there's, except that on that little ship. So.
Yes, so it's basically the ship become kind of a closed heaven for them where they can just basically interact with each other and be able to talk about their life because the rest of the galaxy is 900 years ahead and they don't really connect to them anymore. I think that's going to be an interesting conversation during the show. We're probably going to see them evolve slowly and get more and more integrating into this future and finding more about their role into this future.
Well, they definitely gave us a taste of that in the preview for next week. So I'm curious to see, as always, where it's going to go. But yeah, this episode, I kept trying to take notes on, and then I kept deciding that I really just wanted to watch the episode. It was so powerful and so good, and I just really enjoyed. I think my biggest issue was Burnham being the one to go down to the surface because it once again kind of feels like Michael is the she has the plot armor.
Yeah.
So that was kind of my only really, but good on her for how she handled stuff. But I love Adira. And I felt so badly for Adira and having to deal with all of that. And boy, did the Trill disappoint me in that first couple minutes of interaction there.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the Trill and the Trill planet because I think that was the most interesting close to scientific fact that we have in this show. So the Trill and the planet, the Trill, is also, they have the species and the planet have the same name. I discovered that. So that's kind of interesting. So let's talk about the planet because we see the planet briefly when they walk through it to go to see some of the Trill priests or whatever they call themselves. Mm-hmm. So we see the arrival, the land. So the planet is super.
Very, very green, very lush, very beautiful.
It looks like, I don't know, we'd say Czech Republic in the summer or kind of very temperate climate where they live. And it's great for them because they don't wear much anyway, so.
Yeah, and everything they were wearing was definitely in that light, flowy, we don't get a lot of cold here kind of look.
So this planet is, I made some research a bit, and it's basically classified as a Class M planet by Star Trek. So Class M is Class Minshara. That's what the M meant. I was trying to find what was the meaning of this M. So those are planets, moon, planetoid, which are considered to be suitable for humanoid life. And the definition, so there is I found this on the web. So they define basically that they explain that the Federation found first 1,000 of those Class M exoplanets, and then now we estimate that they estimate that there is around 3 million Earth-type exoplanets in our galaxy.
Right,
in our galaxy. Let's talk about the science here because that's something that's the most interesting part. When this week we probably saw the SETI Live we did on the number of exoplanets potentially habitable in our galaxy.
Right.
So this is interesting because that's really the latest result we get in this field. So we use the spacecraft called Kepler combined with data coming from Gaia, which
is the
has,
new part of this. So we've looked at
yeah,
Kepler data a lot in the past, but now we added in Gaia data to look at the amount of energy that the star is actually giving to those potential planets in those potentially habitable zones.
yeah, because Kepler was launched before Gaia, and Kepler looked at a patch of 150,000 stars. And the researcher who worked on this project basically measured the number of exoplanets transiting around those stars, which are located in what we call the habitable zone. And by using Gaia observation, they could get also an estimate of the distance of all the stars, an accurate estimate of the distance and the size then. So if you know the size of the star, you know the size of the planet as well. And that's the reason this new catalog is super interesting for scientists, because it's basically the statistical analysis that we were expecting, waiting from for Kepler. Kepler was launched for that. That was really the main goal of Kepler, is to statistically derive the number of exoplanets in our galaxy, and specifically those potentially habitable exoplanets. So we can talk about what means for scientists potentially habitable, but it's typically located in the right location from so they could have liquid water, orbiting around a sun-like star, because we're looking for life like ours, and having a size which is basically the size of Earth plus or minus 30 or 50%, roughly. Those are parameters that was defined by in this paper, and they are, interestingly, they link to Star Trek here, because in Star Trek, the class M has this kind of criteria as well.
Right.
They have this, the size of the planet should be this, the size of the atmosphere should be a temperate, etc. So
which is again, for me, that really interesting connection between how Star Trek influences science, because of course these designations were done, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, by the show to kind of like create their own little system, and then we've almost built on that, but in our own way, as scientists, now that we've actually found exoplanets, and now that we've found thousands of exoplanets, and now we can build our own actual catalog using kind of those same types of criteria. So it's really interesting, once again, that Star Trek influence on actual science.
Yeah.
So I liked that, and I'm glad that you're bringing it up, because it's an important part of what we do specifically.
So the number of potentially habitable exoplanet estimated from this paper published last week is 300 million. That's a lot of potentially habitable exoplanet. And in this article describing the class M of Star Trek, they say that by the 21st century, it was theorized that there will be approximately 3 million Earth-type exoplanets in the Milky Way. So the difference here between the 300 million and the 3 million is that 3 million is the planets which have life, basically. So that means 1 out of 100 of those. If we combine the two studies, it will mean that basically 1 out of 100 exoplanets have potential life on the surface and are habitable and so on, which is not a crazy number.
It's not at all, and it fills in that Drake equation spot potentially a little bit more. So
so in the Drake equation, basically we have derived with 300 million, we have derived eta Earth, and the 3 million that I mentioned is basically the eta life, the eta life in the equation. If you know the equation, look at it, you will see what we are talking about here. So
I had it on my shirt last week. I am repping Next Generation today. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't wear a space shirt today. I'm sorry.
So what do you think of the planet of Trill? So having talked about all of the potential for habitability, what really got your attention about Trill? What got you for looking at this?
Luxurious vegetation. So typically a planet which had good temperature for vegetation, uh, chlorophyll, obviously, greenish vegetation, nothing extraordinary or black or purple or something.
Chlorophyll. Okay, yeah.
Chlorophyll. So probably the planet is orbiting around a G-type star or sun-like star. There is liquid water. We see that because we see the pond. We see also the cave with water in it. The sun, the sky was blue, if I remember. I need to watch the show again, but I cannot.
No, it was definitely blue. It definitely looks. I keep clicking between us and Memory Alpha because I can't help myself. But yeah, so it's definitely in the blue sky range.
Yes, so it's very Rayleigh scattering. So it's very similar to our planet, very, very similar. And also they're walking there, and they don't seem to be to have pain or to fly. So that means that the planet's gravity is more or less the same, right? So I think that this trill is a truly Earth-like exoplanet. It's not a real one; it's a science fiction one, but it's a truly Earth-like exoplanet. And then there is the
and of course we see that the trill hosts, of course, are bipedal, human looking type of species too. So again, we have that similar development, same size, yeah,
same kind of bone structure. So they are probably adapted to a planet which is very identical to ours. The only thing that looks very exotic on this planet is this weird fish bird.
Fish bird? Yeah, see, I called it a fish bird too. In my notes, I wrote, oh, that's a really cool looking fish bird. Because, I mean, at first I was like, oh, look, fish, it's just jumping in and out. And then it flew off. And I went, wait, that went way differently than I thought it would. So
we don't have that on Earth because you need to be either a fish or a bird. You cannot be both. In a classification of animals that we have, there is nothing which is just at the intersection. We have flying fish, like the one that can stay above the water for for a few seconds, minutes, but that's all. They don't transform themselves into birds or get wings and start flying away.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, not yet. Maybe one day we'll genetically modify one of those fish and make it fly like a bird, but that's not the case yet. So let's talk about the trill and now the people.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything about them. I know it's in DS9, but I don't have any memory of it. So maybe tell us what they are.
So the trill are a symbiote race. So there are the hosts, which are the humanoids that we see, that we're introduced to a lot of the time. But when we're doing the scans of Adira, there's also what she calls her squid, which I love the term, so I'm going to go with it. And it's basically, it's a symbiote. It interacts with the host. It adds its memories to the host. So it survives generations and it changes from host to host. And obviously in this case, the symbiote's name is Tall. And then all of the hosts have their own names. And once they're combined, that becomes that person. And they get all of the memories and skills and the history. And that's kind of how Trill keep their history going. That's how they know like where they've been and what they've learned and all of those things. So in this instance, we've got a human host, which obviously is unusual and seems to be very offensive. And I noticed that I kind of thought it was interesting how they don't say that when they're talking to him from on board the ship and they're saying we have a Trill and they're having a medical problem and we wanted to bring them here and help. And I'm like, I noticed that you very carefully did not mention that the host is human. And so that was, of course, the big surprise reveal for the Trill on the planet. And that could have gone, well, it did go fairly badly. So that's
she's basically called an aberration.
Yeah. Well, that was probably the nicest thing they called her.
But to go back to the science, because I'm the boring one of the. I love the fact that Star Trek is trying to create this kind of new advanced civilization, which are slightly different to us. We don't have symbiotes with who we interact. Okay, but in fact, in our own biosphere, there is this kind of symbiotic relationship there is species that grow with a parasite that kill them later on, or there is some which grow with a only positive symbiosis. In fact, biologists, and I'm not a biologist, so all I get here is by visiting different papers and checking Wikipedia, the source of our knowledge. But this type of symbiosis relationship is called mutualism. It's basically when the two species don't interact, such as they don't destroy each other, and they get basically something positive from this interaction. So in the case of this, the humanoid trill is basically getting knowledge from the past, and we see that the boyfriend of Adira learned how to play a musical instrument very quickly in the film, apparently. And also, and the symbiote, I don't know what you think he gets, but I think what he's getting is to be able to travel, basically.
Well, and I think a larger, more protective body, really. Yeah. I mean, you know, it's around her heart, and she's, you know, she says it's protecting it. So I didn't look up the trill biology all that much. That's probably a lore I should dive into. But it seems that it gets, it also gets that ability to do more. So the ability to interact with the environment a bit more than the symbiote probably could. And then it also has that, you know, larger, more protective meat sack, essentially, to carry it around so that it's not quite so, you know, vulnerable slug or squid or whatever we're calling it.
It's a beautiful idea, and it's possible that one day we will find some extraterrestrial advanced civilization which has this kind of interaction. And then it will be very difficult for us to understand them. So I'm glad that Star Trek is kind of preparing us, basically. Because imagine an alien and explaining to us that he has a symbiote, and we are talking to him or to it or to the symbiote. Sometimes that the symbiote which is taking over, it's going to be very complicated for us. We already have a hard time understanding each other. So imagine understanding this kind of relationship into an extraterrestrial being.
Well, of course, you know, this isn't the first time we've met the Trill in the Star Trek universe. So, but it is kind of interesting to sort of meet them for the first time again. It was kind of cool. And then I really liked how we finally get some tie-ins back with the sphere, because I felt like we kind of like forgot about the sphere. Mm. You know, we came forward 900 years to protect the data in the sphere so that it didn't make everything go wrong. And then it just sort of like, we didn't see anything from it. We didn't see anything from it. So I was glad that the sphere and what all of the knowledge that it's dumped into Discovery's computers has kind of come back. So it's, you know, making the AI work a little better, and it has vast amounts of knowledge that it can use. And so they got the data on the Trill from the sphere, so that they're actually kind of showing how that works. And of course, that led into the other like plot of this episode, which was the mental health side of everything, and Saru's challenge of bringing his crew back into some sense of normalcy, and the ship making the suggestion that, you know, you should watch Buster Keaton movies, or you should, you know, have a gathering and have dinner in your room. And oh, that dinner went sideways.
Dinner. I think this dinner is going to be the scene that I'm going to remember the most of this season. This dinner was basically it's basically a Thanksgiving dinner that ended up very poorly, because you probably have those kind of dinner where your uncle starting telling bad joke or talking about politics that you should not talk about during Thanksgiving dinner, and people get upset, and
someone has a little too much to drink, and words are exchanged, feelings come out in the open, and all of the repressed things that, I mean, I've been concerned about Detmer for several episodes now, so it was really nice that they finally kind of took the lid off of that whole situation and let it become clear all of the resentments and fears and stuff that was festering underneath. So, I mean, it's a good cleansing dinner, but I love how Philippa is just Philippa.
Yeah.
Well, at least the wine was good, and out she goes with the entire bottle. So that's very on
also
brand
have this kind
for
of
that
people
character.
in Thanksgiving dinner who stay all the way to the end to finish the last bottle of wine.
Who are just there for the popcorn, really. Like they don't really want to be involved in this. They don't want to share their feelings, but they will be very entertained by everybody else doing so.
Exactly. Well, that was
So
a
yeah.
good scene. I think that was a fun scene, and I'm glad that 900 years in the future, even more, we will still have this kind of dinner parties, and there will be still the same kind of problem that we have in our
Yeah.
present time. So it was a
And
good connection, I think.
I liked how it tried to be very inclusive of everybody on the team. So there was something at the table for everyone. Whether or not they were enjoying it was a whole other thing. But yeah, again, this episode for me was definitely on the mental health side, and you have to take care of yourself before you can take care of each other, and some people have to take care of everybody before they can take care of themselves, and commenting on Michael's need to hoard responsibility, which I thought was a great callback to all the ways that Spock had kind of said the same thing to her. So yeah, this was a good one in a very non-science, non-tech kind of way. There really wasn't a lot of tech to
It's
bring
good
you today.
to remind people that when there is intelligent species involved, there will be always this psychological issue that we're gonna have to deal with, even in
Yeah,
2,000 years in the future, 100 years in the future. It will happen.
people are people, even if they're not human.
Exactly. Well,
So
that's all for me. I mean, I look forward to hear about the next episode and see what happened. Now we get more information from the drill, and also hopefully the sphere is gonna help a lot to explore this future
yeah,
galaxy. I mean, I
and what
like.
it's and what it's going to be like when we hook back up with what's remains of the Federation.
Yep. So what does that mean when they say "Welcome to the circle"? You know,
So that's the circle of
the
the hosts,
the
right?
host. Yeah,
So
I
that's
like this.
all of the hosts. When she gives that name, she's now a part of that circle.
Atirata. Well, thank you very much for your time and to talk
Yeah,
with me about this. We see each other next week.
definitely. So we'll be back next week, everybody. Make sure you subscribe and ring the bell. Feel free to leave a comment or 5 with your thoughts and questions. I know we still need to kind of touch on the whole dilithium thing. I've been learning the lore behind that, and maybe we'll talk about it some more next week. As it is, enjoy the weekend, enjoy the next week, and we will be back next weekend to bring you more on Star Trek. So have a great week, guys.
Bye bye.
Bye.